Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Cam, and the month of March has come and gone like a bullet train. Seriously, this month passed right on by. And it is time for the new release roundup, where I will be reviewing all of the new releases that I saw in one massive video. Like my video for January and February, I will have time codes, so if you would like to jump to a certain movie, those time codes will be in the description down below. I know that for a lot of you, there are two specific movies you want me to talk about. So if you would like to just skip to those, by all means go ahead. I think it's pretty safe. Edit that out. I think it's pretty safe to say March was kind of a blasé month for movies. Oh wait, Snyder Cut and Godzilla vs. Kong in 1 month. Wow, we just went from like no movies to just two big blockbusters in the span of a couple weeks. And even though Snyder Cut was an HBO Max exclusive, still, it's crazy. But I saw some other movies also, so without any further ado, let's dig in. Raya and the Last Dragon was directed by Don Hall and Carlos Lopez Estrada, the former of which had a hand in directing Big Hero 6, one of my favorite Disney movies in a very long time, and the latter had a hand in directing Blindspotting. It tells the story of a realm named Kumandra, in a reimagined Earth, where humans and dragons once coexisted. However, due to a series of unfortunate events, the dragons are all but extinct. However, there is one rumored last dragon left, and Raya, voiced by Kelly Marie Tran, is determined to find it. I saw no trailer for this movie. I literally only saw still images, because around the time where you would normally see a trailer for a movie like this, COVID was in full swing, and, well, we just didn't get a trailer. But when it comes to Disney, I have a certain level of intrigue as to what they're going to do, especially with their non-Pixar stuff. And I did appreciate the fact that with Raya and the Last Dragon, they went back to an original story. They didn't try to remake something. And overall, I did enjoy this movie. My favorite part of the movie was Raya herself, voiced by Kelly Marie Tran. I try and give Kelly Marie Tran movies a bit of a break because of all the crap she went through in the wake of The Last Jedi backlash. I'm not a big fan of that movie, but I do feel legitimate sympathy for what happened to her. It wasn't her fault. The movie was mediocre at best. Without going too deep into spoilers, she kind of starts out as your standard run-of-the-mill princess, for lack of a better term, to about, like, the farthest thing from it in, like, a snap. But the movie does a good job of showing her arc and playing it out in a nice way. I liked her story arc. I thought that was the best part of this movie. And I also love the world that this movie created. Kumandra is made up of several towns that are named after various parts of the dragon. There's one called Heart, another called Fang, and Ditto Ditto. There was one called Spine, which was a bamboo forest. And Heart was more of a grassland. There was a definite amount of detail that was put into all of these worlds, and I appreciated that. I liked Awkwafina as the Last Dragon, but there were some parts of it where I don't know. There was some dialogue of hers that just felt too much like it was 2021 for me. Instead of giving her, like, all timeless dialogue, there are some lines where she is like, "And Raya's been gone for too long, it's hitting me right in the feels. You're a dragon, and it's hitting you right in the feels. Thank God you're not a fire-breathing dragon, or else you would have to say, like, this is lit, or something dumb like that." Thankfully, those lines are few and far between, and she is great in the rest of the movie. It's like 1% against 99%. But my biggest problem with this movie was the message. Not the message itself. The message of the movie is essentially we need to trust one another in order to survive. And I actually like that. I like the spirit of that. However, I'm not a big fan of how often they use the message. It's very heavy-handed, and There are many monologues where someone will be like, if only we could just trust each other, then the world will be better again. By the sixth one, I was like, okay, I'm on board with the trusting thing, but seriously, talk about something else now. Like, is there like a Dragon Olympics or something? I'd much rather hear about that. I did something that I rarely do when I go to a movie. I had to go to the bathroom, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm gonna pick a moment, and if by the time I'm back that moment has happened, then I have a feeling I haven't really missed all that much. I picked my moment, I went, I did my business, and I came back into the theater, and what I predicted happened exactly like I thought it was. Now, I am not Nostradamus, I am not a screenwriter, I am not even close. This is one of those movies where, if you have a rough idea of where it's going, that's usually going to be where it's headed. But at the end of the day, I still overall enjoyed this movie. I liked that Disney went in an original direction and not yet another remake. I did appreciate that, and on the whole, I thought this movie was good. I'm going to give it a good rating. Also, quick aside before I move on, I talked about this movie with my friend Rachel over at Rachel's Reviews during a live stream at the start of March, and I also reviewed this movie with Micah over at Wimpy Studios, so I'll link those videos in the description if you want to check them out. Chaos Walking was directed by Doug Liman, who directed The Bourne Identity and the excellent Edge of Tomorrow, and it stars Tom Holland, Daisy Ridley, Mads Mikkelsen, Nick Jonas, David Oyelowo, and others. That's literally just naming a few. It tells the story of a group of people living in a world where all of their inner thoughts can be heard by everyone and everything. It's called the noise in this universe. And everything's going smoothly until one day Todd, played by Tom Holland, discovers a young girl, played by Daisy Ridley. But unlike the others, he can't hear her thoughts. She is immediately marked as a threat by the town's mayor, played by Mads Mikkelsen, and Holland has to get her off of the planet. I watch a lot of the John Campea show, and for a good solid few months, I heard nothing but bad things about Chaos Walking. It was either bad things about the DCEU or Chaos Walking being delayed yet again. Keep in mind, this was pre-COVID. The overall prognosis of this movie was that it was just an absolute mess. So when I went to go see it, I said to myself, well, this is going to be my least favorite movie of the year so far. And I was wrong. The basic complaint that I heard from most people is that there are too many story elements and that the movie is largely unfocused, and that the reshoots are incredibly noticeable. I can safely say that I definitely noticed the reshoots, but I think just on the whole, the movie had a core idea of what it was trying to go for. It was very basic, but it stayed to that story structure as best as possible. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I followed this movie just fine. I did really enjoy Tom Holland. I thought he was really good. I enjoyed Daisy Ridley as well. Mads Mikkelsen is an excellent villain in any movie that he's in. And there was actually some pretty good chase scenes, and there are a couple of really tension-filled action scenes as well. I did have a couple problems with Chaos Walking. First is David Oyelowo's character. I had a feeling that they were trying to do something more with him, but it's never really followed through on. The basic premise is that he's a priest in this world, and so he constantly quotes scripture. But like almost exclusively from Revelations, like, I am the apocalypse and the 7 days of hell and all of that. None of the passive stuff like Proverbs and trust in the Lord with all your heart and he will make your path straight. No, just straight to God's gonna take us all off this planet. I wanted to see more of him, but I feel like the movie just had him there just to give David Oyelowo work. And I like David Oyelowo as an actor, but why was he even there? I was also intrigued by the various villages in this world, and the concept of that is never followed through on. And I think it's because of these reshoots that there are several story ideas that were pitched, but then just never followed through on. Almost as if this movie is going to get a sequel, even though that's probably not going to happen. But on the whole, for a movie that was shot in 2017 and we're just now seeing it in 2021, I think it could have gone far worse than what we actually got. I'm going to give this a good rating as well. Not spectacular, but not the horror show that some reviewers have been making it out to be. It's watchable, which for a movie that went through just a crazy production schedule, I mean, that's like a miracle in and of itself. The Father was directed by Florian Zeller, and it starred Anthony Hopkins, Olivia Colman, and Rufus Sewell, among others. And it is based on the stage play of the same name, which was also created by Florian Zeller. It tells the story of a man played by Anthony Hopkins who is slowly starting to lose his mental functions. Despite every insistence from him that he's fine, his daughter, played by Olivia Colman, is less than convinced. And the movie is told exclusively from the perspective of Anthony Hopkins, who is slowly beginning to lose his mental faculties. The first time I had heard about this movie was when Chris Stuckman released his top 10 movies of 2020, and this was near or at the top. And I said to myself, wow, if this comes anywhere close to my area, I'm seeing it. And sure enough, it came to the local AMC, so I went to see it with my mom. And wow, this movie is... it's kind of hard to describe, in a good way. Before I go any further, I just want to say that I love this movie. I thought it was excellent. Really well acted, surprisingly good cinematography, and it captures a feeling that I haven't felt in a movie in a very long time. But trying to describe what happens in the movie is kind of tricky unless I go into spoilers. I'm gonna try not to do that, but I'll try and be as general as possible. Basically, the movie is all about Anthony Hopkins' character with dementia. And I'm not a cinema studies major, not even close, but I have a feeling that the director was trying to show us what a person going through dementia really is, what he or she is going through. Because there are several scenes in this movie that feel like derivatives of each other, and I don't think that was an accident. I think that was done on purpose to show that somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's has different recollections of something that just happened to them. Like, something will happen in one moment, and then they'll remember it completely differently the next moment. For example, I could be like, oh, these sticky notes are yellow. And then I could show someone that I know and be like, hey, these sticky notes are yellow. And they'll be like, no, they're orange. And I'm like, what are you on about? Of course they're not. These are yellow. There are several moments in this movie where I almost jumped out of my seat because I was just like, wait, that kitchen's different. And at a certain point, that happened so many times, I was like, the movie's got me. It's got its hooks in me. And in that sense, the movie accomplished its mission wholeheartedly. Anthony Hopkins is predictably excellent in the movie, but strangely enough, I think this is a performance that really reminds you just how good an actor Hopkins is. Like, he's been in Thor: The Dark World in the MCU, and he's been in these bigger movies, but you forget that when he gets into these smaller movies, he's actually quite excellent, and that goes double for The Father. Olivia Colman is also excellent. You can tell just the stress that she is under, both from pressures from her boyfriend and just the general state of her father. She wants to be there, but she knows that she can't. So she's trying her best, although her dad is not exactly playing ball. And then there is Rufus Sewell, who plays a complete and total jackass in this movie. But Rufus Sewell is one of those actors who is just born to play villains, like Ralph Fiennes. Like, if you need someone to play a complete and total jerk, you call Rufus Sewell. And at the end of the day, The Father is a very tough movie to watch. However, if you can watch it, I do highly recommend it. I'm giving this an amazing grade. I have a feeling that this will get shunted at the Oscars, but at least it got nominated, and so in that respect, I am very happy. And oh boy, it's that time, isn't it? It's time for the co-main event of the evening. It's time to talk about the Snyder Cut. Oh boy, what can I possibly say about this that hasn't been said by far more important people than I am? I'm gonna try my hardest, but I don't know how I'm gonna do this. Basically, let me just say that I'm a bit of a DCEU apologist. I like this series a lot better than most. I think Man of Steel is a masterpiece, even with its flaws. And I think Batman v Superman, with the Ultimate Edition, has gotten better over time, and is going to get a better reputation as the years go on. But ever since this cut of the Justice League was released, everyone has just been supremely disappointed with the DCEU. The patience is running thin. And ever since that cut of the Justice League was released, Zack Snyder has said, you know, it's unfortunate. If only my cut could be released. And what started out as a hashtag just turned into the actors saying, hey, we'd like to see that cut too. To active, movements to make this thing a reality, to HBO Max being launched, and then finally, the thing coming to fruition. There are people who were very excited for this, and there are people who just absolutely hated it upon arrival. For me personally, and my stance has remained consistent on this, if the Snyder Cut was to be released, then I would happily see it, but I'm not going to hold my breath on it. Because quite frankly, Justice League reminds me a lot of what happened with Blade Runner, how there was an original cut of Blade Runner that nobody liked, not even Ridley Scott himself liked it, because they added in stock footage from The Shining and a narration from Harrison Ford that tried to explain things, but just came across as desperate. And then years later, several subsequent cuts were released until the final cut was released, and people were like, oh yeah, that's what Blade Runner should have been the whole time. Think that, but amplified by 1,000 thanks to social media. To me, the Snyder Cut was kind of like the Loch Ness Monster. People would be like, I saw the Snyder Cut with my own 2 eyes, and be like,
sure, Jan.
But I was wrong. It's not only a thing, but it's out. It's released. It's on HBO Max for everybody to watch. As far as the plot goes, it's pretty much the same as the Justice League movie we got from 2017, only with a lot more stuff in it. And even though, yes, I am a DCU apologist, I love this series, I want to see it succeed, I did go into this with a great deal of caution, because even though it did receive largely positive reviews, I said to myself, 4 hours? Oh, great. But my thoughts on the Snyder Cut are this. This movie is not perfect, it does have flaws, but it's a masterpiece. This is Zack Snyder's Justice League, warts and all. This will definitely make people mad, and this will definitely make people cheer. I'm not strong in either camp, so going into this, I just didn't know what to expect, and I came out of this being surprised at how much I enjoyed it. People have been saying that this is superior to the Justice League cut in every conceivable way. And yeah, I believe it is. Because thinking about the Justice Cut and thinking about the Snyder Cut, it's like 2 completely different things. The Whedon Cut was essentially two creative forces doing this for 2 hours. The Snyder Cut, whether you like it or not, has one clear vision to it and one clear story that it wants to tell. And it does tell it to the best of its ability. The things I liked in the Justice Cut are amplified in the Snyder Cut. Batman is great. Superman is great. Wonder Woman gets a lot of awesome moments in there as well. But the most pleasant surprise was what they did to Flash, Cyborg, and Aquaman. In the Justice Cut, Flash was just some twitchy nerd played by Ezra Miller, and who also says, Dostoevsky, because I guess Stoljanetsyn wouldn't have been too deep a cut for them. But he actually had some really good character development. I love the relationship that he had with his father, played by Jim Caviezel. It does suck that Caviezel's not coming back to play to play Henry Allen, because I would have loved to have seen that. Cyborg is basically gone from, I am so sad, why am I so sad all the time, from Justice League, to actually having depth and a surprising amount of chemistry with his father, played by Joe Morton. He even has a mom in this movie, and they actually have a really good scene together. It's great. But the biggest surprise, hands down for me, was Aquaman. Because I understand that the solo Aquaman movie is not everyone's cup of tea. I still really enjoyed it. But this is the Aquaman that is it's just great. In the Whedon cut, he was essentially there to do two things: quip one-liners and yell like Goofy for no reason. But in the Snyder Cut, he actually, again, has depth to him. There's even a nice little crossover with the Aquaman movie with Willem Dafoe's character. I won't spoil it, but it's great that there was actually some connective tissue going on there. But I guess I should talk about the elephant in the room, in that this movie is 4 hours long, and yeah, that's definitely a problem for me. Now let me be clear, the movie does a good job of breaking this up into chapters, so if you want to do 2 chapters and then come back and do 2 more, you can most assuredly do that. I think it was a good idea to put it on HBO Max, because you can pause and play whenever you like. Lord knows I did that a few times. I also liked the aspect ratio. It looked far different from any DCEU movie that had been there so far. In the Whedon cut, it felt artificial. It was artificially red for reasons. Because I guess Warner Bros. Was like, you need to make it brighter. But this movie remains consistent in Zack Snyder's color choices throughout the entirety of the movies that he's been involved with in this series. And this movie actually feels like a comic book, in that after a certain chapter, the chapter ends, and then another one begins. It's like you read one single issue, and then you don't have to wait a month for the next single issue. I like that. I like the spirit of that. But even still, the 4-hour runtime is still a problem. I'm a big fan of directors having the freedom to shoot their movie in however long they need to, but there were several portions of this movie where, like, definitely deleted scene, definitely deleted scene. I think you could pretty much cut all of the nightmare stuff out of there. Like, everything involving Jared Leto's Joker could have been cut. The Martian Manhunter cameo could have been cut. And again, I'm not trying to be like, oh, this is just too long, I say. I'm not trying to be that person. I'm a fan of this movie. I liked it. But at the same time, I was just like, why was that here, other than to set up movies that are probably not going to happen because Snyder is no longer going to be a part of these movies? But again, I want to say, this movie is still very much a masterpiece. I think my thoughts on this movie could best be described by, well, one of my favorite critics going today, Matt Zoller Seitz from RogerEbert.com. In the closing sentences of his review, he said, quote, "It will mainly please the people who clamored for it. Even fans of the genre might consider it a bit much. It owes as much to rock concerts, video games, and multimedia installations as it does to commercial narrative filmmaking. It's maddening, it's monumental, it's art." Yeah, that's my exact feelings right there. This might sound a bit generous, but I'm going to give this movie an amazing grade. Call me whatever names you like, but I gotta call a spade, and I'm quite frankly shocked at how much I enjoyed this. I would have thought that this movie would have gotten like a great rating on my scale, like at like maximum. But this movie surpassed even my not so lofty expectations. When I was doing research for this video, I came across a review. I can't remember where it's from. It might have been from Alonso Duralde, but I'm not sure. But essentially, there was a review out there that compared this movie to Black Licorice. And I think that that's a perfect comparison, in that there are people that absolutely love Black Licorice, and there are those who think that it is the worst food ever invented. I love licorice of all kinds, #all licorice matters. And so I love the Snyder Cut. I thought that after years of waiting, this is about as good as it was ever going to be. The Courier was directed by Dominic Cooke, and this movie is based on a true story. It tells the true story of a businessman named Greville Wynn, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who is enlisted by MI6 to travel to the Soviet Union as, well, a courier. See, a high-ranking officer, played by Mereb Naninzit, I butchered that and I'm sorry, is a high-ranking member of the KGB and wants to play a hand in the disarmament of the USSR. And over the course of years, the two exchange information while also forming a friendship. This movie combines many things that I love. Benedict Cumberbatch, spy movies, but not like the James Bond type of spy movies, though those are cool as well, but like the actual, like, on the boots on the ground spy movies, like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and Cold War movies. This movie has all three, and so inherently I was going to like this, and like this I did. My favorite part of the movie was, no surprise, Benedict Cumberbatch. I thought that he did a great job in this role. He starts out as just, like I said, a run-of-the-mill businessman. He's a salesman, he travels, he has had a rough past with his wife, but he's trying to do better. And on the whole, he's just trying to be a normal dude. But he gets roped into an extraordinary situation and handles it about as good as you could expect from someone like this. I like the relationship that he forms with Alex. They seemed like genuinely really good friends, and that carried on throughout the rest of their lives. And there were many tension-filled scenes that I was just like, wow, this was filmed really well. There's some predictable stuff in there too, like when Greville's wife confronts him and be like, I want you to stop going to Russia. And he's like, I can't tell you why, I just have to go. And they have a fight. It's expected when it comes to stuff like this. But for the first 2/3 of this movie, I was actively on board. I was like, okay, this is good. I like this. And I had a feeling I knew where it was headed. But then the movie takes a hard left turn. When it comes to true stories, I either know them or I don't. And I was not familiar with this true story. So when this twist happened, I was floored. I absolutely will not spoil it, so you will have to go see the movie for yourself. But it started out, and I was like, okay, I have a feeling I know where this is going. Oh, no. And I audibly said, oh, no, in the theater. Like, I can't remember the last time that happened. At the end of the day, though, I am going to give this movie a great rating. Like I said, there's some predictable moments, but man, when that twist hits, it hits you like a ton of bricks. And honestly, this is a true story that was just very compelling. Nobody was directed by Ilya Naishuller. I apologize in advance. And this movie stars Bob Odenkirk, Connie Nielsen, and Christopher Lloyd, among others. It tells the story of a man named Hutch Mansell, played by Odenkirk. He's a very normal guy. He has a normal office job, a beautiful wife, 2 kids. Like, if there's a dream scenario of, like, big house, wife, kids, he has it. But after a robbery happens in his home, he must confront the past that he left behind. You see, he was once referred to as an auditor, basically the last person you would ever hope to meet. He is a death machine, and throughout the movie, his past awakens, and you feel pity for his enemies. When I saw this movie was coming just directly to theaters, I was like, that's a bit of a risk nowadays, isn't it? But I was excited to see it regardless, and wow, this movie was a total blast. Firstly, I gotta give props to my boy Bob Odenkirk, because he was excellent in this movie. It consistently floors me the range this guy has, because in Better Call Saul and in Breaking Bad, he can go from funny to serious and back to funny again. He's primarily a comedian, but he also can have his dark moments, and that goes double for Nobody. It looks like he also has some stunts, and that he did them himself, which if that's the case, I mean, props to you, Bob, because they were amazing. The fights in this movie were just, They were hard-hitting, and they were great. I also enjoyed Connie Nielsen as his wife. I thought she had many good scenes. And Christopher Lloyd is in there, which I did not expect to see in the trailer. I was like, is that Christopher Lloyd? And it turns out, yes, it was. And he has many fun moments in this movie. He's not just a cameo. He is in there for the long haul, and he's great. In every review that I have seen or read of this movie, almost every one of them compares this movie to John Wick, and it's not hard to see why. One of the writers, Daniel Kolstad, has worked on every John Wick movie, so this movie does kind of feel like a derivative of John Wick. Even the plots are similar, with guys who had very dark pasts trying to go the straight and narrow, and trying their hardest to stay there, but just the world just won't leave them alone, and so they're just like, alright, it's time to watch it all burn. My one hang-up with this movie is the villain. I was not a fan of his, because he felt like every mafia boss like you could ever like see in a movie. It feels like they went to one of those villain generators and be like, okay, what mafia is this guy a part of? Italian, Russian, Chinese? Russian. Okay, what's his name? Oleg or Oleg? Let's go with that. But at the end of the day, it's just small potatoes because, like I said, this movie is a lot of fun. The third act especially. The third act is worth the price of admission by itself. This movie is big, silly, over the top, and I loved almost every moment of it. I'm going to give this a great rating. I dock points for the generic villain, but man, this movie was just a ton of fun. One of the most fun experiences I've had in a theater all year. And finally, let's wrap this video up by talking about Godzilla vs. Kong. This was directed by Adam Wingard, and this is the latest installment in the Monsterverse. Godzilla and Kong are back. This time, they have a death match against each other, and neither one of them is going to back down. There's more to it, but really, that's the reason why we're all going to see this movie. This movie could be literally about anything, like puppies and kittens dancing together. As long as people get to see Godzilla fight Kong, it really doesn't matter. And Godzilla and Kong do fight each other, and it is glorious. Even though I am a fan of the other movies, Godzilla 2014, Kong Skull Island, Godzilla King of the Monsters, one of the main complaints is that all of the fights take place in the dark and raining. And while I don't mind it personally, I can safely say I see why people would consider that a problem. However, they do fight in the dark, but it is generally well lit, and they actually have a fight in the sunlight, and that was really good. This is more of a Kong movie than a Godzilla movie, and I like this version of Kong. I think they did a great job developing him as a character, if a giant monkey can be a character. But I liked what they did there. I liked that they didn't just turn him into the ape who gets taken to New York and shot off a building by machine gun planes. Godzilla's presence is more muted, but I still stand by the fact that Godzilla is being treated as a special attraction. When you do see him, pretty much everything is SOL. And like I said, this movie could be pretty much about anything else, and people would still see it, because this is about Godzilla fighting Kong. And while there is a lot of that, there is also some human stuff in there too. And yeah, that's where I just almost checked out of this movie, because it is just painfully generic. And it's kind of worse when you consider that these plot lines have been done much better in other movies. One of the main ones is this little girl who is literally the only person who can seemingly communicate with Kong. It's a little kid, regardless of gender, being able to communicate with a giant thing. A Monster Calls and the Iron Giant have both entered the chat. Brian Tyree Henry plays a podcaster who is all about conspiracy theories. Mel Gibson did it first. All that plotline needed was Patrick Stewart doing a crappy American accent. Millie Bobby Brown and the little boy from Deadpool 2 are breaking into this facility, and they drop 80s one-liners like this was like the Goonies or something. I'm not necessarily complaining, these cliches are kind of there to just keep things moving along, and I do respect that. However, at certain times I was just like, come on, let's just get to Godzilla and Kong again, let's go. But thankfully, Godzilla and Kong are on screen for a significant amount of time, and it's awesome whenever they are there. My favorite aspect of the movie outside of those two is, and I don't know how to talk about this without going into spoilers, but there's a plot line in there where, let's just say, Monsterverse is not just a marketing term. There is a literal monster-verse in the Monsterverse. That's all I will say. And if they do more of these movies, I hope that they do explore that a little more. But on the whole, as painfully cliche as it is, I did have a blast watching this. I'm going to give it a great rating. I think this might be my favorite of the Monsterverse, though I have to reevaluate my ratings on those. But that is all for me, guys. What movies did you all see in the month of March? Leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you all have to say. And also, leave your thoughts down below if you saw any of the movies that I talked about in this video. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. That way, when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. My name is Ryan Cam. I'll see you in the next one.